Well, there we go. Here we are again. So I want to start off by saying that for every minute spent organizing, an hour is earned. So Benjamin Franklin actually said that. I was blown away when I found it this morning, searching all about Sky from Nifty. And I just want to say, welcome to Zero to Infinity. And this show is all about focusing on helping you launch or scale your business and go to the next level. And we're going to uncover today how to create a successful business, inspire those looking to do it right now. And so here on our live stream, we have Sky Calibey. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Awesome. And he is the co-founder. And what is the exact title of what you do?
You can go with like a solutions architect.
Solutions architect. I love that. And yeah, so you guys set out to create a project management tool from the ground up. And you guys created something pretty awesome. And you guys have looked at the best in the business and taken what you do and brought it all together into this project management tool called Nifty. Mm-hmm. And you guys are actually putting together what people are trying to do all together, which is their goals, their actions, and communications all in one place, all in one platform, and it doesn't slow them down. You guys are working with people in teams from Verizon, IBM, L'Oreal, NYU, and more, just to name a few. How's everything going in your world?
First of all, thanks for having me.
Sure.
We've had a lot of chances to talk, but it's great to be on the live stream here. It's going well. I mean, it actually started as kind of a spark from, we were an agency way back when. We were a New York City design and development firm, and mostly working on well-funded startups or other funded companies, well-established companies, some of which have NDA'd me, so I can't drop their names, one of which is a rapper. But it started with this kind of pain point of, we had all these customers and these projects that we were working on kind of severed between 5 or so tools, and then, another one to communicate with the team. And it just felt like the process was so fractured, and being able to get a coherent report at any given moment was so fractured for us. And then if we felt that way, imagine how the clients felt. So, the time it took to kind of connect the dots and synthesize the reports, you can either go search for it on your own, or you can just send someone a message over Slack and be like, hey, where do we stand on this? Do you have the latest design for that? And it just felt like scaling our company really just meant sending more messages, and it did not feel scalable. And I think that's one of the key words we had in mind when creating Nifty is scalability.
Interesting. And so what were some of the first steps you took to really put this together?
So we actually started building it on our own. I mean, we figured, like, we're the team who has this problem. We kind of have the resources to build a solution. So we started it as kind of an experiment. We used it with some of our clients, but it didn't seem to feel like this was like, maybe this is an avenue, until we actually went to product hunt to feature it. And at this time, it was pretty rudimentary. I mean, it was more or less a front end with some kind of crude back end, but we had a ton of people asking if they could sign up, and like, it wasn't, the gates weren't really open yet. And that's when we start, we got a lot of potential investors wanting to line up meetings with us. And that's where we're like, all right, maybe we're actually onto something here. And you kind of, at the outset, you get two, and this was 4 years ago now, maybe. I mean, at the outset, you really got two key reactions, being, that's fantastic, this is exactly what I needed, or there's no way you can ever do it. It's way too big. There's too many phases in a project's life cycle. Too many types of teams want too many things. It's product suicide.
Wow. And it's sort of, there's one side of the fence where there are entrepreneurs out there that wish they could kind of jump into the tech industry and, build a great app. Where do they begin? What do they think of? But the whole thing comes back, I don't code. That's not something I do. I better think of something else. What do you say to the people? Is it possible for people to actually do that? How do you put together the team? And is it even possible for someone that has no real background in the tech field, like the space that you're working in, to pull together the right people? Have you heard of anything like that?
It is I mean, anything, as cheesy as it sounds, anything's possible if you have the drive. But I think it is extremely helpful to be able to have a technical co-founder, at least one, someone who can do part of the, roll the sleeves up and do the dirty work on the coding front. Some of our top leadership, we have some who are actual developers, but then we have some people who are more like technical architects. They don't really code, but they know how to do the research as to tech stacks and find solutions, even if they can't necessarily implement them. But if you want to, and especially if you can sell some technical people on your vision, it's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just talking to someone that's launching something significant in the Boston area, and he got funding and grants all based off an idea and the belief in him as well. He's going to be on the show coming up next couple of weeks. But yeah, it's amazing once people get behind you and things start happening and flowing. That it can be an idea, it can be a vision, it can be something like that. And
yeah, we were really lucky to be able to have gotten as far as we have even today with only a really cursory friends and family round, mostly just because we had our own resources that we can lean on to build it. So that might not be the case for everyone else. And whether or not you should take funding is enough content for a whole nother call. But I mean, I think what it comes down to is whether it's getting people to help you start building it or help start engaging with it. It's all about being able to convince them of your belief and the problem, orienting the problem you're out there to solve.
That's amazing. And that kind of ties into the next set of questions here, all about organization and business, which is what you guys really specialize in. And of course, full disclosure, I use your product, and that's why I have you on the show, because it's just it's changed so much stuff for our team. It's allowed us to scale. It's allowed us to just get projects finished more efficiently, better, and stuff like that. But we've gone through many different project management software tools, and we've landed on this since January. And yeah, I can't say enough about it. But
thank you.
Specifically, what sort of problems do you see for small businesses when they're trying to get to the next level? They need organization.
Sure.
What are sort of the touch points that you think could be alleviated?
So I encourage people to think of organization as kind of a journey, not a destination. You know, I am not an inherently organized person. Like, there are some people who are just like Mr. Rogers in life, where they come in and their shoes have the right place and their clothes go right in the hanger. And that's not me. I'm like a walking tornado. So I kind of think of organization as this like ever pursuit of creating processes that you can continue to work on. And even if you know where you want to go, it's kind of like getting in shape, right? Like, you know where you want to be, but you know that you're not going to be there overnight. So also kind of identifying how to get there. So one of the first things we think about when we talk about scalability in organization is the ability to allow people to proactively answer questions. And that's one thing that we feel like is empowers people in Nifty, and it's something that's really come to the forefront in this last year of COVID and working remote. Because a lot of things you could just like lean over in the office and be like, hey, do you have that thing? You know, but now it's like, if I don't have that, if I don't know where to find it, I'm either going to send an email, a message, or I use a system where I can go proactively answer that question. And by the way, that lends to your clients too, if you're in the service industry, because they want to know where these projects stand. And if they don't know, they're just going to ask you, which is fair, right? So I think one of the first things I try to encourage people to think about organization is, where do I point people to find answers proactively? And that process can change. You might say, this is how we're doing it today. Eventually, I want to be able to do it that way. So that's one thing I would think about. How can I give people the resources to answer questions on their own, so that when we speak, they're either clarifying things on that, or we're moving it forward rather than playing catch up? Because playing catch up over your email or your messenger is what wears you out throughout every day. It's like the worst part of everyone's work day, I would wager, is just kind of, again, going through this, sending the files, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep going.
So the next thing I would think about, that's kind of organization ground level. And then the next is scalability and repeatability. How can I teach what I'm doing to someone else? And by considering what you do through the lens of someone else, it makes you kind of more aware of what you do. So if this is my role, how can I create some sort of guide? It doesn't necessarily even need to be written right away, but how do I create a process by which I can pass this to someone else who can then replicate it, maybe customize parts of it, but implement it in a way that now I can take a step back and they can continue to help me grow my business. And I think especially like, you know, yourself with an agency, that's huge in being able to open up your client roster, is being able to have, if you have multiple business developers who know how your agency works and can help you close, you have multiple people who know how to build whatever your agency is working on, or if you're a product team, being able to have, this is how we build out a sprint. So just whenever you create these scalable, repeatable processes that allow people to proactively answer questions, I think now you're laying down a groundwork. And I always encourage people in Nifty to start to not over organize. Like, it's okay to say, I want to shake this up, because I think what people do, and especially if you get like a new computer, you build 1,000 folders, and they're not that useful because ultimately you don't know which folder it's in. So I always encourage people to expand out rather than feel like they go so wide that they need to contract in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, when we first started using Nifty, there's a lot of options, stuff like that. But one of the things that it did for us, especially as like a small business in, the advertising agency world and stuff like that, was that we always had this sort of set way of doing things, but Nifty sort of opened up the doors to other ways of doing things. This whole idea of milestones and, like you said, like sort of the agile framework where it's like a set of sprints and timelines and things like that. It really worked a great way for us because it changed the way we think about projects and changed the way we approach them. It's more, we can anticipate things a little bit better. We can get things, now that we're more organized, we can spread out a little bit and think about what we need to do, more headspace, because things are on paper, they're not in our head anymore.
For sure.
So those are some of the benefits, I imagine.
And I always tell people that milestones are not just a management tool, they're a communication tool, because now that these things are auto updating based on completion, I can give you that source to point to find answers. Where do we stand in this project? Well, the milestone can help answer that. Who's working on what? Well, I can open up that milestone and see the status, the tasks, the statuses of those tasks, and who's assigned to them. So now I've answered who's working on what and where do we stand in this process without having to ask anyone a question. Now, if I have any questions, it can be about one of those things rather than just kind of these broad overtures where it's like, all right, let me try to answer you on this one. Especially if you don't know, then you need to go try to synthesize that. So.
Absolutely. And so what's in the horizon right now with Nifty? Or is there anything, I imagine when the pandemic hit and things sort of immediately went to remote, people leaning on a project management tool like yours probably skyrocketed. Has it changed the way people work in general? Has that been something that Nifty has had to adapt with?
I think it's a spectrum. There are some people who already, there's a lot of companies who are ready for working remote from a workflow perspective. Maybe some of the ways they held meetings or initiated HR things are a little differently, but for the most part, they were ready. Then there are other people who had no idea what to do. And we were kind of explaining kind of project management software from the ground up. So I think there's kind of a wide array of those kind of users who, some first time people who just need something, and especially because they need to be able to communicate with others. But I also think one thing the pandemic really highlighted is what I've kind of been harping on is what was really previously this love affair with messaging tools really started to burn people out, especially when 9 to 5 kind of went out the window. And now it felt like, when am I actually not working? Because now I'm like, I'm going to get a message at 8:00 at night, and messaging tools give this implication, unlike email, that you should answer this as soon as you can, versus an email, which is a little bit more kind of ping pong. And so I think you hear a lot of this COVID burnout on work. And I think a lot of it stems from this need to feel like they're always in the office now versus, I've done what I needed to do. You can find what I've done. So if you have questions about it, you can answer those on your own now. Yeah, that's one thing that we always kind of clung to from the outset, that people were kind of telling us we're crazy. You have Teams, you have Slack, you have all these huge messaging tools. Like, what makes you think a built-in messenger in Nifty can stand against them? And it's not that we're trying to win as a messaging tool. We just see that as a piece of the puzzle.
That's right. And the ultimate goal is to not be so spread out and spread too thin with different tools. Like you guys emphasize that in your website, and your project roadmap is all about bringing together the right tools in the right place to make your team or even yourself just more efficient with what you're doing, because time is precious. And then I'm actually going to jump in and show some of these, have you kind of comment on these, but I thought this was amazing. 27% polled said they would save 31 to 60 minutes each day, which I calculate is 10 days per year.
Yeah. I mean, save time by using Nifty, you mean?
By Nifty, just being organized.
By being organized. Yeah, totally. I mean, as someone who's not organized myself, like as a not inherently organized person, absolutely. I mean, I often just lose my phone or my keys, but I can't do that in my software, especially because there's no search bar in life. But the search bar, and if you have everything in one place, you can at least have one search that will find it, is one way we kind of look at it, right? So I think that's absolutely a true statement. And not only are you saving 10 days per year, but you're probably adding some more time on your lifespan.
Yeah, you're probably right. And so what do you see happen? I may have asked something like this a little bit earlier, but what do you see happens when a business gets organized? Do you have any anecdotes or any kind of examples of some businesses, or large or small, that have seen a benefit from using your tool or just being organized in general that allows them to go to whatever next level they are trying to get to?
For sure. I think there's one example of a company who they run call support centers,
Hmm.
and in Nifty, they create a support center out of every portfolio. And from there, they have different initiatives within that support center. So now they can really kind of sustainably grow all of those. Each support center doesn't really need to know what's going on in the other support centers. So they're kind of limited to what they have access to on that portfolio and project level. But the kind of stakeholders in the company have access to everything. But they don't even need to jump into every project and every portfolio, which is like going, center by center. They can use these cross project tools like overview, like workloads and all tasks, to be able to comb through those insights without even having to visit below that kind of breakpoint at the top of our sidebar. So I think that's just one example that pops off the top of my head of kind of creating not only a organization on how we're going to organize data within software, but it's kind of like a company org chart in a way, a de facto org chart for an organization, just kind of based on the natural order of Nifty's hierarchy.
Oh, that's fascinating. All right, let's go into another one here. Lack of progress. 37% of projects fail due to lack of clearly defined project milestones. Can you talk a little bit about clarity in your goals?
Yeah. I think to speak broadly about Agile is probably dangerous because there's a million ways to institute Agile. But I think the reason that sprints exist in Agile, and I'm using this as one example because I think a lot of times with clients, you have these clearly defined milestones. With sprints or with deliverables. So that's how a milestone kind of shapes
what
up.
Agile is in sprints, because we may have a lot of people that don't.
Sure. Yeah. This may not be a dictionary definition, but Agile is just it's a methodology of assigning and reviewing and completing tasks that lend to a larger picture. The name Agile comes because you can iterate quickly versus kind of a more conventional Scrum method where we know exactly what we're going to build. It might take us 3 years, but we have everything blueprinted out, versus Agile, which is like, for lack of a better term, we're willing to wing parts of it. We're willing to get feedback and iterate on that feedback and roll it out quickly. But to sum up this sprints, they call them sprints because you just put kind of clusters of your workflow together. And I think that's important because, quite frankly, like, it's a very human thing to want to see a light at the end of any tunnel, right? Like, you just want to know, when can I take a moment to breathe and celebrate before we start another thing? Because if we were to think of Agile as just like, I assign you a task, you complete a task, it could feel endless, right? It can't feel like this is ever a hamster wheel. Whereas this gives us checkpoints. This gives us places where we can look to gauge ourselves against and celebrate once we get there. Or if we didn't, it gives us a moment and an opportunity to reflect on why we didn't get there so we can continue to hone our processes.
Right. And then this framework, Agile, whether you use sprints or whatever, can be applied to a small business all the way up to the largest businesses.
It's absolutely, I mean, big businesses are falling over themselves to try to go Agile right now if they haven't already. I mean,
Wow.
it's a big thing. I can't tell you if Agile is going to be here for 20 years. I just don't know. But I think the idea of it, which is the ability to react and implement quickly, especially as technology seems to grow at this exponential rate, feels kind of vital for major organizations who need to be able to pivot quickly. That's not to say more scope-driven workflows aren't viable. Like, if IBM's working on their cloud and they're going to roll out a cloud in 2 years, my guess is they know 96% of how they want that cloud to work, so they can follow a really fleshed out blueprint and have, processes in place for change. But you still want to be able to have that ability to react quickly. And I also think Agile is not just a developer thing, like being able to market through an Agile way or design with Agile way. Like, it just kind of become this catch-all for the ability to iterate quickly and complete things quickly.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's not just tech speak. It can be applied to everything. And pivot quickly. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see kind of moments of it in all areas of life. It's just kind of a way that we've been able to try to quantify it and name it and implement it knowingly, without, like, if you look at a sports game, especially something like football, where there are breaks between plays, like you need to be able to react to your environment and change from what your master plan was at the outset. And so I think this is kind of, it's a natural concept that we're finding ways to define and implement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So going back to finding clarity in your goals and milestones, how important is that? Where does that stand with, making things better for your team?
Yeah. It's one of the things that separates Nifty from other products is our emphasis on milestones. That we have projects that don't use them. We have projects that they don't necessarily work with. So it's not that you need to have them, but I think when you have an opportunity to implement one, and especially the way we look at milestones, which is really just a way of gauging the completion of a set of tasks, it becomes really relevant, right? Like if you have an event coming up in 2 weeks and you need to do 5 things before that event is getting launched, to us, that's a milestone. It doesn't need to be this huge, complex organism. It's just here's something out in the future. And now I can get like one master progress bar to help me along the way to see how am I gauging against that end date.
Yeah, it keeps the pace, keeps you on track.
Sure.
And keeps your mind off of wandering onto other things.
Sure.
Great. Let's move on to this one. One of my favorites, miscommunication amongst team members. 57% of projects fail due to breakdown in communication. Can you dive into that? It seems pretty obvious at at a higher level, but communication, when you dive into it, it's nuanced, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where tools that enable communication were a huge boon to productivity until they weren't. And that's because communication is one facet of project management. To us, collaboration is where communication meets action. And the result of action is what's going to be able to be kind of judged and reviewed versus just what we talked about. So if I talk about something with you, if I talk about something with someone else, or even if we talk about all together, the ability to kind of roll that out and say, okay, from here, we have these action steps that we want to implement. And now we can track these action steps. And so the ability to say, here's what we talked about, and here are these action steps right next to each other in the same space makes it even easier. And I think one of the major complaints people have, or one of the kind of aha moments when people come to Nifty, is like, I don't have a place where I feel like I just go and update things now, and then I go over here to talk about it. It just kind of feels like those communication and action are melded.
That's right. Yeah. And using the right tools and having a process or method really saves so much time. So let's go to the next one. This one's good. 27% of people polled feel disorganized at work. And of those, 91% said they would be more effective and efficient if their workspace was better organized. And this goes back to the whole time savings and just getting the right headspace and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, not everyone has equal latitude to shape how things are organized in their companies. So to be sensitive to that, I kind of understand that.
It's a good point.
That thought.
Good point.
I'm lucky enough to do that. And that's where I was kind of saying before, my organizational methods evolve several times a year. That's not because I don't have any method. It's because I'm continuously honing that method. And when we feel like it's time, we can evolve it. If there's like more of a team oriented method, I can build that out and have a communication, have a chat about it and say, this is what we want to change about this process. What's a way we can implement it that we all commit to? And I think that's another big thing, is getting team buy-in to any process, because as soon as these processes aren't followed, and it just all backslides into just communication because there's no action to pair it with. And I think that's where a lot of tool adoption fails, is that the commitment to the action, the commitment to putting that out there kind of isn't either enforced, or it doesn't feel natural. And then all of a sudden it's just back to whether it's chat or email.
Wow. Yeah. Well put. That makes a lot of sense. So I want to put your entrepreneurial hat on for a moment and kind of dive into a little bit more about where you came from and how you came into this business to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Into a little bit about, your journey from where you were into Nifty.
Sure. So personally, I moved to Brooklyn several years ago, to just following interests in music and art. And with that, the understanding too, that there's different career opportunities in New York than there are in Central Connecticut. So one of the things I really looked for in my personal pursuit of a career is a place where I felt like I can work with others. Cause I worked in an agency, just kind of a 2-man agency with my father, working mostly with small, mid-sized businesses who don't have a website, but know they need one. So it's kind of like that introductory block. But when I wanted to go to a place where I felt like my voice would be heard, the skills that I built with networking, communicating, would be valued. And even if it was a place that took on a little bit of risk. And so that's where I joined this agency, because it was like, I was kind of given the opportunity to build out, like, how are we going to run the business development and product management part of growing? Like, how are we going to do this in a way that we can then eventually build that team out to bring others in? And so it was a great opportunity. That's actually where I met Shiv. And so it's been very collaborative the whole time, a high level of communication and respecting each other's ideas. And I always felt personally that I would rather work for a place, even if I didn't know what I was going to necessarily make every year, because it's not salary driven, where I felt like I was heard, because then I felt like I had more control over the organization's destiny. And that was just personally valuable to me. And I guess that's what kind of being an entrepreneur is in its backbone. Even a lot of artists and musicians, before they even know it, they're entrepreneurs. And that's actually what sets the successful ones apart from the ones who aren't, is, the people who just like to play music because it's fun. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not how you become a pro musician or anything, right? So being able to kind of run your own agency, so to speak, I don't even mean like a digital agency, just like your own ability to operate, is kind of core in being an entrepreneur. Doesn't mean you need to be perfect at it. In fact, most of them aren't. And every entrepreneur is eager to tell you all the times they failed. And it's because it does require a certain amount of gut check and fearlessness.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that. So what was the next step after that? So we haven't even talked about Shiv, but I'm sure you guys are both pillars of this product, and
Right.
one doesn't exist without the other. Probably
Sure.
scale
Yeah.
growth that you guys have seen.
Shiv has an absolutely fascinating story that I can't do justice to in telling, but he actually, grew up, was born in Afghanistan, ended up being a refugee in Germany for the first like 10 years of his life, and then eventually immigrated to America. So if you want kind of like the American success story, go no further. And he's really a worldly denizen, speaks 3 or 4 languages. And I'm not even talking about code at that rate. So his ability to kind of have seen so many parts of life and come from a place where family is important and listening is important is part of what's made Nifty this kind of great place to grow. And before that, the agency, because it was that, like I said, that input of my ideas was heard. Doesn't mean I always get my way, but that was never the criteria. It was just more so that when I had a thought, I could air it and it can be discussed appropriately. And so I think having this kind of place where, and especially being an entrepreneur, you need to be able to do a lot of gut checks and say, these are the things we're good at and these are the things we aren't. And you have to look at the founding team and say, all right, for example, Nifty didn't have like a person who had a huge background in marketing. Well, we just got to figure it out. And that's been like a major point of emphasis for us. We felt very, very strong as a product team and a communication team. So I think being able to know who's at your table, not only assess what they're able to do today, but what they're capable of being able to do tomorrow. Especially that, changed very quickly when we had members of our team whose roles emphasis was really to go do in-person networking. Well, that wasn't a thing this last year, right? So to see those people evolve in their roles and kind of change and say, well, this is what I can learn, this is what I can implement and do to continue to grow the company has been fantastic.
Wow, that's impressive. And so personally for you, this has been a journey for you, obviously, just hearing that story. What sort of things have you discovered in yourself working at Nifty, working with Shiv, and anything you can impart about what you've experienced, any kind of self-development that you've realized?
It's going to sound really campy, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think, when you work in a place where I'm not working for a promotion because I'm ground level. So that's not what motivates me. It's not a matter of like, what are your KPIs? It's just like, it's what can you do that we haven't asked you to do? Stuff like that. And so I think it's been very unique, and it's been a huge blessing to feel like I have ownership of something. And that's not to put down anyone who has a salary job and a steady career, because not everyone, quite frankly, can afford to take this kind of risk. And it hasn't always been pretty. But it is kind of an alternate way of viewing life, where it's not necessarily about where you are today. It's where you really strongly believe you can be in several years. And you hear a lot of these big money hot shots talk about think in decades, think, act in weeks, or I don't know the exact quote, but it's a different life than worrying about when the paycheck comes to every 2 weeks. It's just fundamentally different. Why you do it is fundamentally different. Not that it's better or worse, it's just different, and it needs to be for you, because there will be times where it's very tough to be an entrepreneur, to have to learn from your mistakes the hard way. When people, we've had people who want to say negative things about Nifty, and that's their right. And it's just different when it's not just your company. It's like something you've worked on for 5 years, and it feels very personal, and you want to make it right. So it's an alternate way of approaching life. And I kind of feel like being an entrepreneur, like I was mentioning with art and music, it's not just about business. It's more so just this kind of orientation of the self and how you prioritize things in life.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
sounds kind of deep, I guess.
No, absolutely. There's a great quote somewhere along the lines of people underestimate what they can do. What is it? People overestimate, I forget what it is, what they can do in one day versus what they can accomplish in 10 years, something like that. I got to look that up. I'm probably butchering that, but that's really true. And it really resonates, the whole idea of it's a marathon, not a sprint.
The way you chart growth as a person, as a company, all of it changes, because it's obviously there's metrics behind all of it, but there's also this degree of like, how can I shape that more personally? How can I leverage myself to influence this situation? And that's not to say not all careers, a great career, I think, will still allow you to do that in another company. But this was just one surefire way that I found that worked for me.
Sure. Absolutely. And we have a lot of people that engage with this show that are either at a job, or they're thinking about a side hustle, or a career change, or just jumping in the water. What can you impart to them to help them out, to inspire them, some sort of insight into what you would say to yourself if you were in their shoes?
So one of the mantras that kind of ran around the small business rings, and it's probably all across the country, but I heard it in the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, is I work 50 hours a week, so I don't have to work 40 hours a week. And I know it sounds like this insane workaholic mindset, but again, it's more so taking the ownership of what you're doing. And so I think being able to, if you are taking ownership of it, you're taking over not only what you think you can do well, but the things that you need to grow on. And being able to assess those and work on those are probably the things that are going to help you, and by extension, whatever that side hustle is, improve quickly. And again, that doesn't even need to be business, if it is, but if it's, here are the things that, if I'm learning an instrument, these are the things I'm really good at. So every time you sit down, work on the things you're not. And I think that kind of way of going about life will help you become really well-rounded. And that's where I think true insights come from, because you can start to connect dots rather than continuously going deeper down a single channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak to perseverance and staying with it if you believe in it a little bit?
It's great to have people around you who support you and believe in you. So I was really lucky to have that as well. People who, just have been able to kind of see things from the outside, because there are definitely times you're going to be there and be like, am I crazy? Am I the one? Am I missing something here? I'm very deep into this, so let me know. And I just think you need to continuously reevaluate. And that's not to say you should know when to jump ship, but it's more so just make sure you know why you're in it, and make sure you're in it for the right reasons. To me, and this is actually one of the things Shiv says a lot, is money is a byproduct of value. If you can bring enough value, you will earn it. But it's not about just like checking the bank account and stuff like that. It's more so about like, how do I continue to do something and build something that others start to believe in? And then when you get people like yourself, quite honestly, who just so freely talk about how much they believe in what you've been doing, it's hugely rewarding, more than I can really communicate, because it's something that you spent so long building. And some people are just kind of like natural builders, or even if you're not building today, if you feel that burn, like just try it, start anywhere, start with something that you're interested in, and you'll be surprised where it goes.
Yeah, that's really great insight. And so jumping back to Nifty for a moment, you guys, it looks like you guys have an interesting approach. You kind of break down all the best parts of other competitors out there, and you really fine tune everything into Nifty. What is the mindset when you guys are approaching where to begin with the next iteration of Nifty and things like that? I think it's
Sure.
really helpful in terms of the mindset of, entrepreneurship and priorities.
Yeah. So especially at the outset, we knew the tools in the market. We knew the things we liked about them. I don't think the goal was necessarily to put those into one thing, but more so create an experience that was intuitive. So when people are coming over, they don't feel like they need to learn a whole new tool. And that's one thing that's really stuck out to us, is learning a software, especially one that has the breadth of Nifty, is learning a tool. And so we didn't want it to feel like something that, like, personally, I struggle big time with Adobe products. I can't find them heads from tails. I don't take any courses on them, and maybe I should, but I kind of feel like if I can't sit down and figure this thing out after 2 hours, maybe it's not just me. Maybe I'm not just crazy. And Adobe's doing something right. So I'm not saying they need to take my advice, but that was not the experience we wanted with Nifty. So we knew what we liked. We knew some of the key ergonomics. From there, we actually started to see a lot of other companies implement our ideas, which was great. A little frustrating when they have a lot more juice to kind of promote it as their concept, but that's just the way of the world. I mean, we kind of borrowed from them. So inevitably all these tools become somewhat incestuous over time. But I think whenever we're rolling out a new feature, there's a couple key tenets we look to, like the 80-20 rule. Like, can this solve the problem for most people, with an understanding that there's still some people who want more, because there are people who always want more. And if you listen to every bit of feedback you get this like super bloated product that no one knows how to use at first glance. And then you're solving nobody's problem because a brand new product comes along that's really minimalist, starts to win, right? So it's really, everything we do is through the lens of usability and accessibility. Is this something that, if I put it in front of you tomorrow, can you successfully implement and do the thing that it's intended to do? And when you look at some of the awards, I don't know if award is the right word, but a lot of the ratings we get around other sites,
Yeah,
we get high. Yeah, we get high marks on a lot of them, but around usability and customer satisfaction, stuff like that. And to me, like, that's how you win, because that's how you get people to buy in and stay with you and grow with you. Yeah. And a lot of those people are like, they'll be honest on, hey, I would love to, I'm sure you've not, I would love to see this feature in Nifty, but I'm willing to wait for it because you're still solving my problem today.
That's right. I'm always typing in, hey.
Yeah. And we welcome that. We love being able to have that kind of engagement with our customers and hear what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great just having you guys right there in the chat. It's just better than any other project management tool that I've had so far. Just having you guys right there and immediately, chatting back saying, yeah, let's put that on the board for something coming up, and we'll discuss that, or here's how to do this. It's, it's super helpful from a customer service perspective. That's just, it makes me, it's just awesome that you guys do that.
And also a major emphasis on how can we solve your problem today, even if it's a workaround. It's just another way to approach the problem or the idea, with the understanding that it's maybe not, it's a Band-Aid solution before we actually find a way to suture it, but it's just something that you can work with in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you? What's next for Nifty? What's happening?
It continues to grow, and it's gotten a lot more eyeballs. We have some key strategic partnerships that we're really excited to start to announce soon. And just the ability to, one point of emphasis for us right now is not only to continue to build out the product, but continue to build out the ways people can find us and use us and implement us, whether it's through integrations. We have that really immersive Google integration that people love, and Microsoft has really jumped up in the market as far as like Teams and whatnot. So we're looking forward to rolling that similar suite out for our Microsoft friends as well, so they can feel in the loop in that regard. So things like that, being able to plug into other types of video chatting. So we do continue to build out our native features as well, but we do want to create a lot more integrations with other experiences, because we know we can't do everything for everyone, period. We want to, if you can kind of run your hub from here and bring other experiences in, or meaningfully bring Nifty out into other places, that's been a big point of emphasis for us, even from the beginning. I mean, that's one question we always got, was like, how are you going to do everything for everyone? Well, that was never necessarily the goal. It was just, how can we do that 80-20? Like, how can we do most things for most people so you can have an office in the cloud?
That's a great way to put that. How big is your team at the moment?
We are 30 people and growing. So we're really excited about that. We were a really international team and heavily remote team even before COVID. So unfortunately, we've not seen the Midtown office since, and it's not clear we're ever really going to go back. So there are certainly days I miss walking around Midtown Manhattan, and other days, especially in the heat, I definitely don't. So I think that's another interesting kind of frontier we're going to see, is the return to work movement, and how that's going to evolve. Because I think a lot of companies, you're already seeing it now, where people are doing, well, we're never coming back. Well, we're coming back on this date. Well, we're going to do some sort of hybrid thing. A big point of discussion is, do we let our employees tell us what days they're going to work from home? You know, are we going to say you have to be here 3 days a week, you choose the days, or are we going to tell you those days? So that's where we kind of feel like something like Nifty has a lot of staying power, because whether half your team's remote, half your team's there, you're fully in the office, it's still relevant, and you're still able to proactively find that information, whether or not you're able to lean side to side or you're just in your personal home office.
Yeah, that's great. That's great foreshadow of, what's to come potentially.
It's going to be really interesting. And I think we're going to see a lot of companies say they want to be full remote, and over time retract that, whether it's because they have fears that it's hurting productivity, whether or not it actually is. It's kind of an easy thing for, depending on the company, it might be an easy thing for executives to say, well, we don't have people in office anymore, and that's what's hurting us. Or I think for certain demographics, I'm sure in my early 20s, being able to go into an office because I worked in New York, like that would have been a plus for me. I wanted to go somewhere. That's why I'm here.
Right.
So I think there's still going to be a major appetite for that. I don't think the in-office work is going anywhere. I think it's just going to be this kind of, if not an ebb and flow, we're going to find kind of this middle ground of hybridity. There are certain developers, even US developers, who, for example, my brother is a database developer at Timescale, and their headquarters is in New York. He used to fly in there like 2 or 3 times a year, but worked pretty much fully remote before then. So that's not going to change. You know what I mean? So I think the kind of roles that we allow to work more remote is going to change more. We're going to open up that scope. Developers had been working remote years before the pandemic, whereas now I think we're going to allow more people as kind of a workforce to do that to some degree, but every place is going to be different.
Wow. I have 2 other questions that are more technical about Nifty. How many users do you have?
I don't have that exact number right now. I just kind of fall back on that. We have over 10,000 paying teams. Wow. I don't have the exact number on hand.
That's huge. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, and this is all within 4 years. This happened.
Completely bootstrapped, all within 4 years. It's built on kind of the back of the agency and the people within it, and it's grown quite a bit from there.
Wow, that's fantastic.
A lot of word of mouth, a lot of, more and more people say, I heard of you from an agency I work with, or a client referral, which is great.
Wow.
It has that small business vibe that I'm used to, because referrals is how you get jobs in small business.
Yep.
You did a great job with someone, they send you someone else.
Yep. Just the hustling, hitting the street, making it happen as well. So how can people find you? What's in Nifty? Maybe you can kind of lay out what's the best way for people to get more information about your product.
Our homepage, https://niftypm.com. And there's a chat bot there. If you have any questions, you're never talking to a robot. It might ask you like what your name is, but it's always a human actually responding to you, and myself included. If you're in the interface, I always tell people, drop down that drop down tool in the top right, look for the Lego man, and shoot us a message. I'm one of several people there who are willing to talk to you. And If you message us on Facebook, we'll respond there. So if you can find us, and if you have questions that you can't find on your own proactively, we're there to help answer them. Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. I can't say enough about Nifty and what it's done for my business and my team. It's allowed us just to take on more work, believe it or not, take on more work, but also get more work done, which has been a huge plus. And if you know anyone out there that could really use a boost in their understanding about organization and project management and stuff like that, reach out to Sky. Check out Nifty Project Management. It's blowing up right now. And Sky, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you're a busy man with Shiv and your whole team. We've been trying to pin this down for a while, and I'm super happy we finally got to do it.
Yeah, Nick, I'm really glad we got to do this too. We've been kind of going back and forth, and we've had to reschedule a couple of them, but I'm really glad we got to do this, and I'm hoping we can do another one down the road, or maybe you have another member of my team on here. It's great getting to know the people who actually get to use Nifty. So thanks again for setting this up and having me on.
Absolutely. And let's talk soon.
Sounds good. Probably later today.
Yep.
Take care.
Exactly. Later today. Bye-bye.
Bye.